Yes, hello everyone, and welcome back to the Football Tribe UG channel. Robert Kesakos is your usual suspect. Welcome back to yet another episode on your favorite football updates channel. Today we are here because Chelsea have appointed a new manager in Liam Rosenior, a 41-year-old England international who has been a manager at their sister club in Strasbourg in France, where he guided them to European competition for the first time in 19 years in his debut campaign that was after the 2024-2025 season. They did qualify for the UEFA Conference League. Liam Rosenior is a son to a man that I really like so much, called Leroy Rosenior. Until yesterday, I did not know, but I did wonder whether there had been a relationship between the two. The reason as to why I fell in love with Leroy Rosenior is because he too is a football pundit, football analyst, a former football player who played for clubs like Queen's Park Rangers, clubs like Fulham, clubs like Bristol City, and I remember appreciating him during I used to do Fan Zone, and there's another weekend preview show of the Premier League that he used to do every weekend, and I really loved his analysis and the way he went about things. So I fell in love with the guy of how he went about his TV work. So Leroy Rosenior, he did represent England at the youth levels. That's Leroy Rosenior, but eventually opted to represent his native country in Sierra Leone. Now, he is the father of Liam Rosenior, the man who has been appointed as the new Chelsea manager on a long-term contract. It is a 6.5-year contract for the 41-year-old gaffer who has only been at Strasbourg for 18 months. Now, of course, I do not know how Chelsea fans will take the news, but I think it's a step in the right direction because they needed a manager. They have filled the role. So they put out a statement that the club, Chelsea Football Club, is delighted to announce the appointment of Liam Rosenior as head coach for the men's team. The Englishman has signed a contract with the club that will take him through to 2032. He arrives at Stamford Bridge after coaching at RC Strasbourg, there, but also has experience in English football, having managed Hull City for, I think, 2 seasons. And then he was formerly an assistant manager to Wayne Rooney at Derby County. So that's where he is predominantly known. He did say in the aftermath of his appointment, while speaking to Chelsea or to the media, he said, "I'm extremely humbled and honored to be appointed head coach of Chelsea Football Club. This is a club with a unique spirit and a proud history of winning trophies." He went on to add that my job is to protect that identity and create a team that reflects these values in every game we play as we continue winning trophies. To be entrusted with this role means the world to me, and I want to thank all involved for the opportunity and faith in undertaking this job. I will give everything to bring a success to this club, to bring the success that this club deserves. And of course, he went on to say, among other things. But one, I'll say congratulations to Liam Rosenior. Why? Because we do not get to see many black managers in the Premier League. And I do not say that because he's been given the opportunity as if to balance the scales in giving, a man of a different race an opportunity. But I say it's a step in the right direction. Oftentimes, we've had the reports, we've had the information that certain coaches have not been given the opportunity to manage some of these big clubs. That ordinarily it would be easy for a Frank Lampard and Steven Gerrard to be entrusted with the club than maybe a Cole Touré, than maybe, let's say, a Raheem Sterling, if you were retired, maybe a Sean Wright-Phillips, and any other black manager that they will be out there. I use the other two as examples, not because they're managers themselves. But yeah, that for me is one. Now, as soon as I saw his appointment, the first thing that I took concern of was the length of his contracts. Why Chelsea have predominantly put themselves in that frame of handing out long-term contracts. I thought, one, that they had learned from their previous lessons, because they've handed out lengthy contracts before to managers who have not gone even halfway those contracts. Particularly, I point to Graham Potter, who I think put pen to paper to a 6-year deal and could barely make through it a year. Then Enzo Maresca himself put pen to paper on a 5-year contract with an option to extend it for a further year. And look what happened. After 1 year and a half, he's been shown the exit. So for me, that's a concern. But I'll leave the legalities to Chelsea and their bosses. But I do question that decision particularly because haven't they burnt their fingers enough to realize that maybe we should be giving out 2-year contracts, maybe 3-year contracts at best, with an option to extend for a further year if things do work out? Because at the end of the day, when things do not work out, these managers are owed a pay to the effect of the length of that contract, depending on what the terms and conditions are. So, but we'll park that aside. And then the other question that came to my mind, and this is a question that I've had ever since the sacking of Enzo Maresca, and it was a mere extension of the same question when Ruben Amorim got sacked yesterday. The question is, how many times are Chelsea and Manchester United going to cut, to chop, and rebuild every now and then? Because it seems that in every 1.5 years or every 2 years, Manchester United and Chelsea find themselves in the same place they had been prior to 2 years prior to that, or a year and a half prior to that, because for them, it's like they're trying to build a castle, but every time they build the foundation and onto the first floor, then suddenly they realize maybe there's a defect with the foundation. So they bring it down and try to rebuild again. Because I say that because a manager is a key pillar in the building of a club. A manager is a critical pillar in building a club. He is one of the foundations. Of course, at the core of the foundation is the organization itself, and then the players and whatever the philosophy is, the short, the mid-term, and the long-term objectives of that entity as a club. But a manager forms a critical mass of that foundation. So how many times are Chelsea and Manchester United going to go through that process? Yesterday, for those of you that care to remember, we spoke about Manchester United at great length. So please go and check out that video on the channel about Ruben Amorim and what next for Manchester United, because they've had 10 managers since, Sir Alex Ferguson left the club, for both managers and interim managers combined, Ferguson having left in 2013. Now, ever since Tony Boehly took over the reins and his partners of Bluco, the reins at Chelsea, buying the club from, Roman Abramovich, who was forced to sell because of the Ukraine-Russia conflict. Chelsea, how many managers have they had? They've part ways with Thomas Tuchel. They've had Graham Potter. They've had Mauricio Pochettino. In there, they've had an interim Frank Lampard. They've had Enzo Maresca. And now they are having Liam Rosenior. Now, the question is Liam Rosenior going to be the last core of that foundation in their building? Are they going to give him the time that they afforded Enzo Maresca, even though in itself it was short? Because I did not think Enzo Maresca deserved to be sacked. That's for starters. I thought, even though there had been a breakdown in relations between Enzo Maresca and certain senior figures within the club or certain departments of the club, the fallout between those parties was not beyond irreconcilable differences. It was not broken beyond repair. It hadn't been shattered to the extent of a glass of a windshield in a car crash. That's how I looked at it. But they decided otherwise. Same applied for Manchester United. I felt the same feeling. Because when I look at the grand scheme of things, and particularly when it comes to Enzo Maresca, we're talking about a manager who in his debut campaign guided the team back to UEFA Champions League, having finished 4th, won the UEFA Conference League, perhaps as expectedly so, but more importantly, won the FIFA Club World Cup, beating the UEFA champions of PSG in the final while at it. So, I thought that sent a clear message that we have a capable manager on our hands, that along the way, we may have a dip in form, we may have difficulties, but in the larger context, in the grand scheme of things, this is the right guy for the longer project. And what would have further cemented their feelings about Enzo Maresca, or those impressions about Enzo Maresca, was Manchester City poking around. Enzo Maresca as a possible replacement for Manchester City. The question then Tony Bolly and all his management team would be asking themselves at the time when those reports came back, because he did inform the club in mid-October and in mid-December, as was required by his contract, to reveal that if he entertained any such talks with a club like Manchester City, which he did, was the question they would have posed to Enzo Maresca would be, how better can we support you to ensure that you stay longer, but also that we achieve success? How best can we support you? Of course, he had been supported, but more needed to be done. We know the kind of state that Chelsea are in. Whereas they have a very good squad, it's not an elite squad. There are departments within that squad where you feel you could strengthen. For example, you could use an elite striker. For example, you could use an elite defender who is also a leader in that backline. Maybe, somehow, somewhere, Robert Sanchez may be wanting sometimes. But this season, he's been quite good. He has, I think, about 8 clean sheets. I do not mean to say that 8 clean sheets should define his overall goodness as a player or, lack of being good. But he's shown signs of being good, although oftentimes inconsistent. So, whichever departments that they can improve, they could have looked to improve under Enzo Maresca, But they decided otherwise, and it is what it is. But every time you sack a manager and bring in a new manager, it has an impact on the longer term project. So, for example, when you go to Manchester United, their objective was, and I hope it still remains, to win the Premier League title in the 2027-2028 Premier League season. What does that mean? A season and a half from now. That's the objective. But if that was the objective set at the time of appointing Ruben Amorim, is it still the same objective? Is it achievable? Having then had to cut down or to chop that project, halfway it, to say we're going to start all over again? For Chelsea, if the objective was to get back competitive, win the Premier League title and win the Champions League, have those objectives changed, or has their timelines changed because of the change in managerial personalities? Oftentimes, the answer is the objectives have not changed, but the timelines will have shifted, because every manager may require different amounts of time to make certain implementations, unless you do have exponential financial resources that have you not flouting the rules, financial rules, both for UEFA and the Premier League, for you to set up a squad that is capable of competing at all those fronts to achieve those objectives. I said in the morning that unless you're Manchester City, because when Pep Guardiola walks in, it took him only one season, when he went trophyless, for him to start setting records the subsequent season. And we know how many trophies he's won since then. Many, many trophies. I think, more than 18 to his name. So he's been brilliant, but it's because they had the financial muscle to commit to his project. We know the kinds of qualities of players that they were bringing in, the Kyle Walkers, the Raheem Sterlings, yet they already had good players in Yaya Toure, in Sergio Kun Aguero, in David Silva, in Kevin De Bruyne. They went to bring in Laporte, Ruben Diaz, Joao Cancelo, Rodrigo Cascante, brought Erling Haaland, a continuation of the project. Look at the Jemil Dokus, look at Omar Mamouche, look at all those players, Ryan Cheki, Tijan Reinders, and prior to that, Mateo Kovacic, Nico Gonzalez, Matthias Nunes, and so many others that came during that time. Ilkay Gundogan, the goalkeeper Ederson Morales. Some of you forget that it was Claudio Bravo that came first as the first choice, and things did not work out. They chopped quickly and went for Ederson Morales, So, and yet at the time of him coming in, he found Joe Hart, who was at the peak of his game, but he realized this is not going to be my guy. So they built that project quickly enough. They committed the resources to build that project quickly enough for success. And Manchester United and Chelsea going to position themselves in such a manner. I do not feel it is going to be the same way. Why? Because there's so many rules curtailing the game in terms of direct investment. But also, We're not, but I do not think there are many managers we can put in the same bracket as Pep Guardiola that are currently available, who you're going to commit those resources to, and they will bring you quick success. The question, how many are they and who are they? I, for one, do not think they are there. I think that Pep Guardiola is in a category of his own when it comes to present-day club football. One of the managers that you would want to bring close to him is Antonio Conte. He is a quick success manager. Fix it, win things. He's not a long-term project manager. So you park that to the side. Are you going to go and get that one? The question is there for us to answer. For Manchester United, the jury is still out there. They have Darren Fletcher as an interim. Ole Gunnar Solskjaer wants to come in as an interim as they decide their next course of action in terms of a permanent manager who we all expected could be appointed in June. That's at the end of the season. But for Chelsea, they've already found their successor in Liam Rosenior. Is he the right guy for the job? The easy answer is we do not know. We do not know with absolute certainty. If you're a Chelsea fan, you'll hope that he is the answer. If you're neutral like me, you will say only time will tell. Because yesterday we thought Mauricio Pochettino was the guy. And yet after one season, they part ways with the club. The day after that, we thought, okay, Enzo Maresca may not be the guy, but let's give him the benefit of that, having come from Leicester City, where he had done brilliantly well. And I thought he did okay in his debut campaign. Second season, midway, sacked. So, only time will tell. The question is, what are your thoughts about Chelsea's appointment of Liam Rosenior? He is not overly experienced, but at least he's managed a club before. Similarly, with Enzo Maresca, he does not have a plethora of experience. The difference is Enzo Maresca had worked under Pep Guardiola. Maybe he learned something under that. But to counter that, Liam Rosenior, I will tell you, he's been at the helm of Hull City, not the same stature of clubs as Chelsea. He's been at Strasbourg as an independent man running affairs of that club. He's worked with Bluco before at a sister club, and he knows the workings of the company and their bosses. So, in terms of the chemistry or how to balance that relationship, unless it goes sour soon or later, I do not think you will find a problem in managing that affair. But the question is, because I've already said, and I'll continue to mean, it's one thing to manage a Hull City. It's a whole other different story to manage a Chelsea, to manage a Manchester United, to manage an Arsenal, a present-day Manchester City. Later on, even if it were to be Tottenham Hotspur, if you're coming from Hull City, it's going to be one heck of a job. So, what are your thoughts? What are your feelings about the appointment of Liam Rosenior at Chelsea as the new Chelsea manager? What should we expect from him as a manager? He does prefer to play a back three, but he's played with a back four before at Hull City. Are we going to see Andre Santos, a player he worked with last season while on loan to Strasbourg, feature a lot? What does that then mean for Enzo Fernandez? What does that mean for Moises Caicedo? What does that mean for Cole Palmer? Is he going to be exploited of the wingers? Only time will tell. Are Chelsea going to experience a new manager bounce the next game? Perhaps. May come a little too early because it does come tomorrow. That's when Chelsea will be in action for match day 21 of the Premier League, and their game will be our game against Fulham in a London derby game. Difficult fixture. Fulham are on a bit of form, but perhaps they could take that encouragement from their 1-1 draw against Manchester City to show the new manager that they're in for the fight for the remainder of the season. Your views, leave them down in the comment section, and we shall continue to engage. Otherwise, stay blessed for now. Bye-bye from me.